eNCA is partnering with government to get South African students home from the Ukraine. Many of the students have managed to make it out of the country but are now stranded in neighboring countries. The partnership will enable their return from Poland, Hungary, Romania as well as Slovakia. A group of 10 students are expected to arrive at OR Tambo International Airport shortly. eNCA's Heidi Giokos is there and joins us now. Heidi, what is the latest coming from the airport? Have they in fact walked out as yet?
Not yet, Fundo. We are watching very closely to see the arrival of 10 students that managed to get out of Ukraine into neighboring countries, and they got onto a flight to South Africa. But we are joined by Durko's Clayson Moniela as well as Aspen's Stavro Nicolaou. Thank you both so much for your time. We do appreciate it. This is a very important move for the South African government to try and get South Africans stuck in Ukraine out there. Speak to us about this process and how difficult it was for you to try and firstly identify those trying to get out and also to get them back into South Africa.
Thank you very much. So this wasn't easy, as you're correctly saying, but we're grateful to the support of the many South African volunteers based here at home and also abroad who put their shoulders to the wheel and work with government and the private sector to make this possible. Firstly, getting people out of a conflict zone was always going to be difficult, but our ambassador on the ground, Ambassador Andre Groenewald and his team worked tirelessly to ensure that South Africans got out of harm's way and were helped to cross into neighboring countries like Hungary, Poland, Romania, Slovakia, and from there we've been able to get the support of companies like Aspen to buy flight tickets and bring our nationals home. So we're quite grateful that this has happened. It's ongoing work because we still have people out there, but I mean, with the students I can confirm that all tickets have been bought through the support of Aspen, and we're just working to ensure that they come home. There are one or two South Africans that have decided to stay in Ukraine. I mean, there's a pastor, if I can tell you, give two examples. There's a pastor that's running an orphanage. She decided to stay because she can't leave her children. But overall, we're grateful that we're able to, receive our nationals back home and they're safe.
Great. Okay, I see a lot of movement. I think it could mean that some of the students have arrived, but I'm not sure if this is going to be quite tricky, Fundo, but if you can just stay with us. Sorry, Stavro, I think it's going to be difficult. It almost seems as though the students have left. Actually, they haven't. Fundo, stay with us. We're going to ask our camera operator to take the camera off of the tripod. It's going to be shaky visuals, so we can just get to the students. If you can just stay with us, Fundo, it's going to be quite volatile, but just stay with us, just so we can get to the students. Fundo, just bear with us. We are here with a student.
Guys, can you please come to us quickly?
Yes, welcome back.
We are just waiting for all media to get themselves ready in Fundo, but as you can see, there is a South African who's managed to get back into the country, and I think we're all ready to go.
Okay, cool. Can you see them now? Can you see them now? See ya? They can see us. Come. Okay, come to us now. Come to us now. Okay, come to us now. You can come to us now.
I have to go now.
We just spoke to his family a short while ago, and he has arrived at the airport. Just introduce yourself to our viewers and just tell us about your experience in Ukraine.
Shem, I think he's overwhelmed. Just give him some space.
Guys, give him, you can stand.
Just give him time,
guys.
It's a bit too overwhelming.
Hi, guys. Okay.
It's too much.
It's too much. Okay, guys, can we just allow...
Yeah, it's understandable. Mfundo, just give me a second. I think it's just truly overwhelming, Mfundo. There are just too many people here, and I think he's very overwhelmed. One can imagine the trauma. But there are more students. I think if we can try and make our way back to where we are expecting more students to arrive, one can only imagine how difficult it is for them. He had been waiting for a while for all media to be ready to speak to him, and then he just got extremely overwhelmed. So I think it's better to just give them space.
Most
and
certainly.
try
It speaks to the reality, Heidi. It speaks to the reality what
more
you've just
students that have
captured
landed.
now.
But we do know the plane has touched down, and we will try and get more students to engage with us.
No, Heidi, very understandable. I mean, it speaks to the reality of what exactly these young people have been through. You would assume that somebody gets off a plane and can just easily start engaging the media and recounting their ordeal, but realistically it is hard. So this is very much expected and is probably even something that many would understand, that it cannot be easy. This is not a media-trained individual, and it must have been a very traumatic ordeal. And they honestly didn't bargain to perhaps actually recount the ordeal as yet. All the more reason why I wanted to ask if there would be some sort of a psychosocial support for these young individuals as they return, because it honestly is going to be even difficult for us as ordinary citizens to hear them detail what exactly happened, how they had to maneuver out of the Ukraine and back to home soil.
Certainly, Mfundo, and I think it's just an overwhelming experience. There are hundreds of cameras in this individual's face. He's extremely overwhelmed. He's probably just holding on to the fact that he managed to get out of Ukraine into South Africa. It's been an extremely overwhelming experience. And as we were interviewing Clayson Monyela from the Department of International Relations, telling us that it's been extremely difficult. We also know some students actually tested positive for COVID and they couldn't fly back immediately. Some have opted to stay, and it speaks to the realities that they are facing. They're nearing the end, some are nearing the end of their studies, and what is this going to tell for when they have to start studying again? Do they have to start all over again? We're going to move in. It seems as though we have found somebody who is able to speak to us. Let's just try and get our camera in here. Mfundo, just bear with us.
Sorry, babe.
No, man, it's here, but we are here for her. Yeah.
Can you put your name and name?
Tinyiko Malubana.
Malubana.
Yes.
You're here for?
I'm here for Vubu. Bukhari Mtonga. She's my cousin.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Is she also, is she or he?
It's a she.
Is she also from Ukraine?
Yes.
Okay. How's your reaction to the after seeing that?
It's exciting. It's exciting to have her home.
And then?
Yeah. We can't wait to see her.
It must have been a really traumatic.
It was. Like, it has actually, it is still traumatic until we see her. Then I think that's where we're going to be getting.
How old is she?
She's 25.
And she's studying?
Medicine. Yes.
Is she almost completing her studies? Or
Yes, she's almost
what's going to happen?
completed.
Will she apply to complete the studies in South Africa? What?
We are not sure. Yeah.
Do you think that maybe you could
Hello.
assist in completing the studies?
Pardon?
Do you think that maybe you could assist her in completing the studies in the country?
Yeah, we just want to see her home. As long as she's here, then we are happy, and then the rest, God will take care of the rest.
Could you make Sister, how do you feel given that you have returned to South Africa? Must be quite overwhelming.
No, it's not me actually. I'm waiting for my cousin sister. Yes,
Okay.
so we're waiting for
And
her.
how does it feel for you as family?
It's overwhelming. Yes, we're relieved, but then we haven't seen her. We're still waiting to see her. The minute we see her, I think that's when this whole thing is going to sink in that she's really bad.
Sorry, ma'am, can I ask you a question? What has your engagement been with her, given the fact that there's conflict in Ukraine? What was the conversation like speaking to her? Sorry, if you could just look at us. What was the engagement?
Oh, this way also, babe. We're all so busy.
Sorry, we're actually live on the eNCA. Sorry. Yeah, I mean, it's too overwhelming. Sorry, Mfundo, it just seems as though Media are just really overwhelming individuals here, but we'll try and get engagement with more individuals. It's just very overwhelming. There's a lot of media here. Everybody wants to know what's going on. But as you could hear, her cousin is landing, 25 years old, studying medicine in Ukraine, managed to get out through the assistance of Aspen and the Department of International Relations. Of course, trying to understand how this whole process worked, but also making sure that family members and loved ones are safe. And we know she's 25 years old, managed to get out, studying medicine in Ukraine, and very uncertain as to what the future holds, because what happens if they can't continue with their studies.
No, Heidi, quite understandable. I heard that.
Because I think she's very overwhelmed. There's a lot of media there. Actually, let's go. This is like a real running spree, but I think we've managed to locate the student who's landed. If you can just bear with us, and hopefully she'll be able to speak to us.
A sense of how you feel right now, having seen your sister and how on the other side.
I think everyone understands the fact that it was a very traumatic experience. So always nothing to play with or have the media wanting to only use it for media gain as well as ratings. These are real people's lives. People are dying on the other side of the world. The message that I really do want to put across is the fact that us as South Africa must realize the fact that this is a human genocide that's happening in Ukraine. It is not some form of narcissism or trying to, I don't know, control the population or whatever. People are being bombed. People are dying every single day. And my only plea is that we take it very seriously and making sure that our government does push for peace in the land of Ukraine, especially understanding the fact that we are members of JERCO. We're members of BRICS, which has very strong alliance with Russia as a country. And I think we can kind of make sure that, you know what, we bring peace in that land, because the people, they really do need it. So, yeah.
Sorry, ma'am. How has the help been from the South African government to get you out of Ukraine?
That's a very difficult question. However, I do just want to thank Mr. Andre Groenewald, who was our ambassador. He facilitated us getting out of the border of Hungary. However, majority of, because it's such a difficult and dangerous situation, there isn't real repatriation that could take place. Students had to get to the border on their own. And like I said before, I'm from Kharkov, and it's like a very dangerous part of where the bombings are happening at the moment. It was entirely up to the students actually to just get themselves to the border. However, when we did get to the border, Mr. Andre was a great help, and yeah.
Talk to us about that. What was your experience in getting to the border and then coming to here?
I don't want to talk about that right now. I feel like I was still traumatized by the whole experience. I don't want to live that form of trauma. Those are not the questions I'm interested in. What I'm interested in is how can South Africa help Ukraine at this form of a crisis? How do we help the people there? Because people are being killed. I know people who have been killed, people who are targeted. It is a very serious situation. How can we help bring peace in that land? I'm not interested in answering questions, just so everyone knows about my trauma, what has happened, what I experienced, what was it like. I don't want to talk about that. I want to talk about how can South Africa help Ukrainians become, or like Ukraine, become a place of safety at this moment. But thank you guys so much. I just want to go home. Thank you.
Mfundo, if we can just need to get out of this media scram. It's quite difficult. But what a interview! I think it's extremely profound to hear. Let's just listen in again.
I'm going to give you my card. We're going to organize it. But I also want to see if we can help you with your studies.
Oh, thank you so much.
Because we don't know what the future holds in Ukraine.
Yes, of course.
Let's chat around the future of your studies.
All right, thank you so much.
Just very quickly, we were speaking, quite relieved that you've arrived back in the country. How do you feel, just being on South African soil?
It is a form of relief. To be out of a war zone, you can only imagine what it's like. But I'm just happy to be home, and I would really love it if I could spend time with my family now. I don't want to be too overwhelmed, but thank you guys so much for covering the stories and making sure we get traction around Ukraine. Thank you.
Can you describe? Are you able to describe? Very, very great. Thank you guys so much. Get out. Don't know how else it would have been possible, but we are so grateful for your help and this.
Mfundo, so I'm just going to try and speak over what you're seeing now. It's one of the medical students that managed to get out of Ukraine into Poland, flew from Poland to Paris and managed to get into the country. She is part of the 10 students that managed to get the assistance from Aspen and the Department of International Relations. She's made it very clear that she does not want to engage with regards to the trauma and the kind of conflict that she experienced in Ukraine. What she has said, though, is that we need to try and assist Ukraine as much as possible, the South African government, that is. I'm going to ask my colleague, Jill Matlala, to just walk with me. I'm pretty sure there are more students that have landed, but it's pandemonium here because they're coming in drips and drabs, and it's very difficult to identify them because the Department of International Relations, together with Aspen, have also struggled to identify them, but we do know it's 10 of them. We've managed to see 2 so far, and I'm sure that there are more that have landed and are probably going to be coming through. But as you can see, lots of trauma. They don't really want to speak and engage. It becomes very difficult for them to see cameras in their faces the whole time and needing to relive their reality back in Ukraine. But I must say, the student that we spoke to just a short while ago, extremely strong and expressing how happy she is to be back into the country, but not excluding the fact that she's very worried about what's continuing in Ukraine, saying that the South African government needs to assist. We do know from the Department of International Relations that more are expected to land in the next coming days. They're trying to assist as many as possible. Some have opted to stay as well, but hopefully we'll be able to identify more students that have been on that Air France flight back into South Africa so we know it's from Ukraine into Poland and then into France and now into South Africa.
You know, I'd say, Heidi, their silence or election to not recount what has happened, in fact, speaks volumes. It tells us exactly how unspeakable the trauma is. What they have experienced is clearly not even worth uttering at this point. Fully understandable. And I also understand, as the media, that here you have media who believe that this is our real connection to what is currently happening on the ground in Ukraine. So this is the one connection we have to get a clearer understanding of what exactly has been happening on the ground. Very brave of her to, in fact, stick to her message, which is that of raising awareness and saying this is real life. People are dying in the Ukraine. People are being bombed. We've heard in several reports where some say those that are of Russian descent or speaking Russian would say that even if the war was started in our name, we are also being bombed. Just the reality there on the ground that people are dying, women, children, men, people are dying. It's really very scary. I can honestly imagine that trauma.
Yes, exactly. And, you know, you touch on a very important point to say she's sticking to her message, to say that we need to help Ukraine. And I think us reaching out to these South African students and having all these cameras in their faces, it's our way of trying to understand the realities that what people in Ukraine are actually facing. And it's almost our way of really trying to understand what's going on. What's interesting is when one of the media colleagues asked the students what was her experience at the Ukraine border, trying to leave Ukraine into neighboring countries. We do understand that some reports suggest that black students, black people were being mistreated, were being completely sidelined, were not being assisted at all. And she opted not to speak about that. She says, I don't want to speak about that. I don't want to engage on that. I don't want to relive the trauma. I would rather opt not to engage on that. The other thing is, Fundo, it's very difficult to identify students. So you're seeing people happy, cheering, and so excited to see their loved ones, but we don't know if they were in Ukraine. So it becomes very difficult to just walk up to someone and say, sorry, were you in Ukraine? And we're trying to get Dirko and Aspen to help us with that. But as you can see, my colleague Jul Matlal is actually showing you that it's quiet at this stage, and we're not seeing many students coming through, but we'll be seeing more and more come through, not just today but throughout the week, because this is an ongoing partnership with Dirko and Aspen, trying to assist many. The other thing is that we do know that when we spoke to Yes, we do know when we spoke to Clayson Monyela earlier, he did say that there's almost a time frame for the South African government to get people out of neighboring countries, and it becomes extremely difficult when there's war going on to try and reach these people. And you heard from the student we spoke to earlier on saying that the efforts from the ambassador in Ukraine and neighboring countries has truly helped them try and find some kind of way out. But hopefully we'll get more clarity and understanding to all of this. I was going to head over to Stavro Nicolaou from Aspen to get more clarity, but I do see he's in the middle of an interview. And Fundo, we are just going to keep monitoring the situation and see if we can identify any more students. So far we've seen 2, but we're not sure if the others managed to get out and not really have any engagement with us. But we'll be monitoring the situation and hopefully able to figure out what's going on.
Now, just before I let you go, Heidi, you spoke to, or at least I saw Stavros Nicolaou just engaging the student a bit. I don't know if you caught what he was saying to the student around further assistance for them. Did you catch that?
Yes, so he did just give them his business card and say, if you need any kind of help, any kind of support, please do reach out. And I think that's extremely important, because you can only imagine the trauma that these students are facing. What's also important, and we were actually going to be asking Stavro that just before we saw the students arriving, where it's going to be a huge, huge problem for many of these students, because nobody knows how long the conflict between Russia and Ukraine are going to continue for, and how long this war is going to continue in Ukraine. Many of these students were nearing the end of their degrees. They were in their final year, or almost at the end of their studies. What is this going to mean? Are they going to be able to continue here in South Africa? Are the universities in South Africa going to be able to take over their credits, their studies? What happens if they were in the middle of their practicals? So it's a very complex matter that the South African government is going to have to also engage on these various universities, because I'm sure, Mfundo, that many of them, even if there is peace in Ukraine and the matter is resolved, would one actually want to go back? That's a question that I think many are going to be asking
Very
here.
important question.
So I think what Aspen was also trying to ask was to say, if you need that support. Mfundo, I'm not sure if you have enough time for me, but I'm going to head over to Stavro. I see he's finished there. So I just want to see if we can get a chance to just speak to him and get him on the.
Cheers.
Thank you so much. Sorry, Stavro. We're live on eNCA. I just want to get a sense from you. We've seen 2 students so far, extremely traumatic experience, but many of them relieved to be back into the country. What have you been able to gauge and gather from engaging with them? I know it has been quite pandemonium, but tell us what you've been able to ascertain so far.
Heidi, look, these students are extremely traumatized and they are overwhelmed with mixed emotions, I guess. I think probably none of us can understand. The one student very briefly explained to me. She said that Ukraine is war-torn. There were bombs going off everywhere. There were people dying in front of her, she said, and she had to flee. it's a very traumatic experience for them. And the best thing we can do as South Africans, private and public sector, the best response is to get these people back home, reunited with their loved ones. Now, there's another very important element. I suspect some of these students will require counselling, and their academic futures are uncertain. So we will look as Aspen to see, can we assist with scholarships, bursaries, or placing these students elsewhere. I cannot see the academic calendar resuming anytime soon in the Ukraine. And of course, as I said, if there's counselling required, we're happy to try and assist there as well.
Definitely. Just quickly speak to us about more South African students arriving. This is an extremely important partnership between Aspen and the Department of International Relations, because I'm sure many don't have the means to come, many don't have the budget to come, many are struggling to get out. What kind of supports are you providing, but also have you managed to speak to more students wanting to come in, and when can we expect them to arrive?
So, Heidi, we're not as Aspen covering the direct contact with the students. We obviously have contact with them when they're back home. But to our best understanding, there are 25 students that are still stranded in neighbouring countries, neighbouring countries being Romania, Hungary and Poland, and I think there might be a student in Slovakia as well. So those 25 students are the ones that we are looking to bring back home. The first 10 have arrived, so we're 40% of the way there. We're expecting another 13 to arrive on the weekend or on Monday. The 2 that won't arrive then are only not going to arrive because they tested COVID positive. So as soon as they're able to travel freely again, then we will ensure that those remaining 2 of the 25 come back home as well.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you so much, Stavro. We do appreciate it. That's Stavro Nicolaou from Aspen, and I think extremely important, especially his first answer, Mfundo, to say that a lot of them are extremely traumatized. They are going to need counseling, but also their academic future and their qualifications are uncertain at this stage, because what happens if they're nearing the end, what I mentioned to you earlier on. So we will be monitoring the situation and trying to see if we can spot any more students, but I think many of them managed to get out and obviously saw the media and probably thought they don't want to really get involved in all of this, extremely traumatized, but so far we haven't seen any more students.
A very long journey to healing for these students as well as their families, because, I mean, as a parent, you yourself not knowing what is happening and only watching on television and seeing a country being bombed is honestly very, 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 very disturbing. So clearly a lot of healing across the board. Hopefully a number of social workers will come to the family's aid and actually help them through this journey of healing collectively. Heidi, we'll catch up with you as this story develops. You're watching All Angles on eNCA, DSTV channel 403.